Well, good day, everyone. It's great to see everybody here. We are in the morning here on the west coast of the United States, but the rest of you could be any time of day. So no matter where you're joining us from, I am thrilled to have with me today Jolyana Begay-Kroupa from the Phoenix Indian Center. Before I introduce her, or ask her to introduce herself, I just wanted to say hi, I'm Laurie Battaglia of Aligned at Work in Scottsdale, Arizona. And Aligned at Work is a leadership consultancy firm, and we also do diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We think those two things are one thing, that you can't have great leadership without a focus on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, or vice versa. So I have known Jolyana for about 5 years, and she was named the CEO of the Phoenix Indian Center earlier this year. So Jolyana, I'm going to turn it over to you. Introduce yourself. Tell us what we need to know.
Good morning. Thank you, Lori. I'll go ahead and introduce myself in my heritage language. So, Ya'ate ta'anolto she'e yaha trachitni nishle to tsinajini bashishchin ashche tashiche to ye'idene etrachitni dashanale. Jolana Begay-Kroupa Yanishia to Tsahotso de Nasha. Yaat e abinet a anultwa nihitini dolet a shashazaj. So I'm greeting everybody on this beautiful morning. I shared the four clans that tell about who I am as a Dene Navajo woman. So I belong to the Red Running into the Water People clan, and I'm born for the Black Streak Wood People. My maternal grandfathers are the Red Bottom Cheek, and my paternal grandfathers are the giant people of the Red Running into the Water People. So there's four clans that tell the story about who I am. And I come from a community on the Navajo Nation. It's called Fort Defiance, Rabbit Brush, just a small little area near the old military fort. I was born and raised there, and I moved to the Valley over 20 years ago, and I've been engaged in our community here locally. I joined the Phoenix Indian Center in 2005, so a few years ago, as a language consultant, teaching Dene language classes. And that's how I first started my engagement with the Phoenix Indian Center. And then I joined full time several years later as a program manager doing program oversight over language and culture and also the prevention programming here at the center. And so I then transitioned into development. So I became the development director, really working to help to secure dollars for our center so that we can do the amazing work that we do. And then within this last year, I was appointed by our board of directors as the new CEO. And so a little bit about my story and my connection to this wonderful organization, of which I'm happy to share a little bit more about. But I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Lori, for inviting me and for allowing us to have an important conversation this morning. And so, for those of you who don't know where we're at, so Lori and I are actually in the Phoenix metro area, and we're in this wonderful, beautiful space. We occupy the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary homelands of the Akimel Ataman, the Pipash peoples. And so we recognize and we support the sovereignty of Arizona's 22 tribal nations here in Arizona, and for many other tribal nations who have occupied these spaces as well. And so land acknowledgement and just really recognizing where we are at on this beautiful day is important for both of us. And so I wanted to share and just kind of do land acknowledgement to really kind of highlight and to recognize where we are at. And so I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. And I always learn so much every time I speak to you. One of the things that I know has becomes something that people should be more aware about is the land acknowledgement,
Mhm.
because we are sitting on native lands no matter where we are, at least in the US and other indigenous areas elsewhere. And there's an organization, maybe we can put the banner up, called nativeland.ca, and it's native-land.ca. If people want to know where they are and who had this land, who, I don't know if I'd say owned it, because I don't know if that's um, synonymous with the native culture, but who protected the land, who lived on that land, who stewarded that land. You can
Mhm.
go to that. It's an app and a website, and put in where you are, and it will give you it will say you should do more research, but here's what we came up with. So we want to thank nativeland.ca in Canada for their work on that.
Mhm.
And everybody should be more aware of that. I think a lot of us are not. So as we do that, let's see. Yeah, yes, Yasmin, could you put up the other link too? So tell us a little bit about the Intertribal Council in Arizona, Jolyana.
Mhm. So, and to your point a little earlier, it was not ever our norm to try to claim and own land. In fact, in my language, in Navajo, when we even talk about states, we're talking about this idea that there are these imaginary boundaries that tell that this area is known as this and this area is known for that. And to say Arizona and Navajo is like 4 or 5 words put together. So it's definitely foreign. We never claim to own Mother Earth, and in fact live among each other peacefully, since time immemorial, and since the concept of imaginary boundaries and this is yours and this is mine, they're really, that stemmed from a time that was, we didn't know, it didn't exist in our ways.
Mhm.
But ITCA is a really great resource if you're wanting to know more about American Indian tribes, specifically in Arizona. So it stands for the Intertribal Council of Arizona. And so ITCA is an organization that works to support, advocate the 21 tribal nations. So there are 21. Navajo is not part of ITCA, in that Navajo Nation is fairly large. They are the largest tribe. And so to find information, you can look at, their tribal websites, learn some of the basic facts, where are their heritage homelands and that type of thing. So it's a really great resource if you're wanting to know, well, who are the tribes here locally, or where are they located. About 30% of Arizona is tribal nations. So interesting fact.
Yeah, I sit adjacent to, so I work out of a home office, and I'm about a half a block from the Salt River Pima Maricopa. I might have said that backwards.
Nope.
Okay. Okay, community,
Mm-hmm.
which owns the land all up and the reservation is right adjacent to us. So
Mm-hmm.
it's in my world all the time. It's really harder to ignore in Arizona than it was in Pennsylvania. So, and we will get to the Phoenix Indian Center and what it's all about. But growing up in the outside the Philadelphia area of Pennsylvania, I was not aware. I was aware that one time Native people lived here, but I didn't know that they were still there. And I think I think depending on where people live, they may come away with this, oh, there's still people here that are indigenous. There's still American Indians. There's still Native Americans here. I urge people
Mm.
to get educated about that, because they are here. They are proud. They are among us. And there's a lot to be learned from the history, and a lot to be learned from, I'm just going to say it, the whitewashed history
Mm.
that we've gotten in our schools about way back when. And we'll circle back to that at the very end. But
Mm-hmm.
I just urge people to do a little bit of research and find out, first of all, whose land are you on, and then who's here now, because as you said, Arizona, 30% of the land is native,
Right.
or is reservation based. It's
Mm-hmm.
all native. but I don't think it's as prevalent in certain states as it is in other states.
Yeah.
So, could you tell us a little bit? And I'll just go back to one thing I said there. When I first entered into working with folks in Indian country, my question to your predecessor, Patty, was, what do I say? What's the right thing to say? Do I say American Indian or do I say Native American? And now Indigenous has become just more of a natural word to go to for me.
Right.
Is there a right and a wrong to that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And we get that all the time. I personally am asked pretty regularly, like, how do I say it? What do I call you? I want to be respectful, which I appreciate. And my response usually is it's personal preference. So there are some community members who prefer to utilize the term indigenous, which is, I think, becoming more common these days. Native American is the term that I used growing up. Being engaged with the Indian Center and many of the national organizations, they utilize the term American Indian. And so I've kind of gravitated toward that term, although, some people don't agree, and that's okay. Not everyone is going to agree, but I would say that for the most part, it's really personal preference. Some people don't even like to use Native American or American Indian, but they would prefer their tribal nation. So, I'm Dene and I prefer that term over any others. And so I really think it's up to people, can respond differently. And I think it's always going to be that way, and that's okay. But it's also okay to ask just to be sure. It's not disrespectful just to get that clarification. What would you prefer I use? And that, I think, is being respectful and mindful of who you're talking to.
Exactly. Thank you. And I'm
Mhm.
going to also encourage people to put comments in LinkedIn. And okay, we do have one comment from Shauna. Um, oh my goodness, I'm going to mispronounce this. Jelana, I don't know if you can see that in the comment area there. There you
Uh,
go. Thank you, Yasmin, for putting that up. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Pretty sure I'm going to mispronounce it. But Olone?
Alone.
Mewi? Me, me,
Moekma. Oh, I know Moekma.
okay,
So she must be near, I think I'm going to guess and say that it's near Palo Alto, because I know at Stanford there is a building that is called Moekma.
there we go. So we'll
Yeah.
find out as she comments in the box. But please do, if you want to get interactive, please do give us comments, and we will do our best to see them and respond to them. So, with that, Jelana, can you tell us a little bit about the Phoenix Indian Center? Its 75th anniversary is this year. I was privileged to be at your Silver and Turquoise banquet, which was an amazing event and an amazing fundraiser. Oh my goodness gracious. I just came away kind of like, wow, from that night. But tell us a little bit about the center and the history and how did it get. I was also impressed with the fact that one of the founders family is still coming to this and still presenting people and wrapped you in a beautiful robe, which made me cry. So,
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it was an amazing night. So our Silver and Turquoise Ball is our biggest fundraiser event that we have each year. And this year being our 75th, we really just had an amazing night. We had so many supporters there who were, interested and not only donating their financial contribution to help us do our work, but they were genuinely interested in getting to know more about how they can support what we do. What are the possible collaborative opportunities out there? And so it was an amazing night filled with about 600 people who gathered together and really just worked toward raising dollars for our Indian Center. So thank you to all of our supporters out there that had such an amazing time at our annual Silver and Turquoise Ball. So the Phoenix Indian Center is such an amazing organization. I'm so happy to be part of this team. Our center is the oldest Indian center in the country. And so we were established in 1947, which is 75 years ago this year. We started during the times of Indian relocation. And so Indian relocation is really a time during the 1930s, 1940s, when the federal government was continuing to work toward assimilation. And they wanted families to relocate into major metropolitan cities to, become part of mainstream society.
Hmm.
And so it was during that time that there were families that were being relocated here to Phoenix. So there was 5 major metropolitan cities that were designated Indian relocation sites, and Phoenix was one of them. And so our founder was relocated here from Omaha, Nebraska, which is quite a long ways away.
Yes.
And the idea is you move these native families furthest as you could get them, so that they don't go back. And so our founder came here during that time frame, and Omaha is quite different from Arizona. And so he knew right away, there is a need to establish a site where, when these families relocate here, there are resources, there are places to socialize, to put a plan together, because they're given a 30-day stipend to figure it out. And so our founder and a few other group of local new relocatees gathered together, and that's how the Phoenix Indian Center was born. And so since then, we're really an organization that's dedicated to providing important needed services for urban American Indian families that move here. And so we have services ranging from workforce development, so getting, our community members engaged in the workforce, finding them jobs or helping them to build on their skill sets, etc. So our workforce is really our longest standing service area that we have been engaged with for quite a long time. We also do some work around substance abuse prevention and suicide prevention work. And so when we look at data, when we look at what our numbers tell us, we have high rates of suicide for our target population. We have high rates of substance abuse. And so in the center and a local grassroots coalition have really organized programming that we take out into the community to help inform our clients, our customers, about what historical intergenerational trauma is. We do community education awareness workshops to really kind of start to address some of these issues. We hold suicide prevention trainings. So our suicide prevention and substance abuse prevention programming is crucial and important need for our community. We do work in the area of youth development. So really the programming is designated toward mentorship, college and career readiness, getting our young people to think about life after high school. And so we have a group of youth specialists who are engaged with our American Indian youth, and there are thousands here in the Valley that they, try their best to reach out to, create events so that they can engage with one another, they can learn about leadership skills. We have a youth coalition that really is also engaged in putting together programming and advocacy efforts that resonate with our American Indian youth. We also have language and culture programming. So that's my personal favorite. I am truly passionate about language revitalization efforts. And so our LNC is really centered around, we know that many of our families are not able to go back to their ancestral homelands. They may have, school work, or it just might be there's not enough time, or it's further away. And so we want them to stay engaged with who they are and what it means to be American Indian in an urban setting. You're not surrounded by your language or your culture or your traditions. And so we develop programming to allow them to continue to stay engaged. Storytelling sessions, language classes, cultural classes, as best as we can provide, both in a virtual and in-person format. So our language and culture is really an important piece of what we do, because we know that knowing who you are and where you come from is going to really help you as you move forward in life. And so it's an important part of the work that we do. And then, of course, there are many other special projects that we're engaged in all the time. Advocacy efforts, missing and murdered Indigenous peoples. So we do work around there. Boys with braids, awareness about why our young men have long hair and how to celebrate that. Civic engagement efforts, so really encouraging people to get out the vote. Those types of important events, projects that resonate with our community. And so
Mhm.
it's really important that we do work around that. And so, sorry, I apologize. That's a little
You
bit
can't
about
turn off all the sound. It just happens.
the Indian Center. Really is an important organization. We had a wonderful time celebrating 75 years of being here, and created lots of programming for our community to engage and celebrate with us throughout this entire year. So it's been fun.
Yeah, it's been pretty amazing for me to watch the center just grow and grow and grow in the 5 years I've known it. And you were really an important place for people to come, or to, sometimes it was a come to get vaccinated, other times it was a we're doing this virtually now. But you were really a center of influence during the pandemic for Native people and others. So, what kinds of things did you do there
Yeah,
during
great
that time?
question. Great question, Lori. So, um, our American Indian people were heavily, heavily impacted during the global pandemic. We lost lots of our relatives, and I speak for myself in that, I totally can count beyond 10 close family members and friends that lost their lives during COVID or to COVID.
Yeah.
And so the Indian Center during this time frame, we did not close, we did not shut down. We are considered an essential organization. And during this time frame, in fact, went into overdrive. We have about 33 team members on staff here. And so in comparison to many other nonprofits, we're a little on the smaller side, right? But the work that we do is enormous. And during that time frame, we really, really worked hard to try to meet the needs of our people. First of all, we did not close ever. Not one day did we shut down. We were continuously um, trying to think of creative ways to reach our people, because we couldn't do any face-to-face interaction, and that was the biggest way in which we interfaced with our community. So we did things from getting on the phone and calling, doing some check-ins. What are your needs right now? What are your biggest challenges? Are there some resources I can share with you? So we were literally calling every customer client that we had engaged with over the last 2 years. And based on their feedback, we then went to work to try to find funds and resources to help meet their needs. We were not allowed to go back to our ancestral homeland. So many of the tribal boundaries were, you couldn't go, even I couldn't go home to see my folks if I wanted. And so instead, what we did was we created a campaign to allow our local relatives here. And there are thousands. I want to say, there's probably about 125,000 Native people that really live off of the ancestral homelands in major cities like Phoenix, Flagstaff. So they came together and brought resources. So we did a fill the truck campaign, and we filled these long, big trucks
Yes.
full of supplies and resources, and took them up to the rural tribal nations, to our brothers and sisters there. And so it was amazing to see just the outpour of community members here locally wanting to help, from a case of water to some bales of hay. Like, we were loading up anything that was being donated, and it was really rewarding to know how how we were able to engage our local community in supporting our relatives in the rural communities who, can't just drive right down the road to a Target or a Walmart, that type of thing. And then locally here, we've organized food distribution events, because we knew that the impacts of COVID
Yeah.
um, had a lot of our people with limited means suffering, and we were able to organize as best we could some immediate food distribution resources, hand sanitizers, and those types of things to help them. So lots of different programming that we normally did in person, we moved to virtual. And that took a lot of effort to be able to, how do I shift it to a virtual, So we went into overdrive during that time. And I'm so proud of our team members because they were dedicated and committed. We were in our business suits loading cases of water when it's like, almost 100 degrees,
Yeah.
but we had to. There was no
Yes.
question. And everybody stepped up. And so it was really neat to see us really rally around supporting one another, especially in the times of need.
I think I remember a call early on saying, "Do you know where we can get a semi tractor trailer to to take things up to the Navajo Nation?" I was like, "I have some good connections, but I don't know that it goes that far." So,
Yeah.
and
So
next thing
when
I knew, you had found trucks to get the stuff up there.
we
Yeah.
did, and we were thinking in the beginning, gosh, I don't even know if we could fill this big, huge semi trailer. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, we didn't fill one, two, three. We filled seven of
Yeah.
them. That's the
Yeah.
kind of impact we had. And it was really amazing to see the support from our community.
Yes, and I like to encourage people to hit up that link that's up there for the Phoenix Indian Center and get on the mailing list because I'm checking the comments. And hi, Jordana, how are you? And Shauna says, boys with braids, love that. In my community, long hair was challenged by some folks. And yes, we've experienced a lot of bullying
Mm-hmm.
for Native boys, and it's not cool. And I think you're still doing some events virtually and some live, depending. So for
Yes.
folks that want to know more, get on there. Their newsletters are chock full of what's going on now, and
Mm-hmm.
follow them on social media because they're on all the big platforms, and you'll see what's going on, and you may be able to participate virtually. I know I have once or twice. So
Right. Yes.
good. So there's sort of a positive thing going. There's a positive movement right now to get Native people back to their roots and their cultures. And we're seeing more support from, well, we'll talk in a minute about the Phoenix Suns and what they've done with their jerseys and their recognition of the tribes and all that, because I think it's pretty wicked cool. And I'm not a sports follower. Um, but they were one thing. Deb Haaland, the Secretary of Interior, was here recently. I know I saw pictures with you
Right.
and with our friend Tracy and other folks when she was here. And tell us a little bit about what's encouraging and what you've seen with this sort of movement toward bringing people out into the forefront.
It's really neat to see, this positive movement toward representation. And I think it's as an Indigenous woman, it's beautiful to see, right? So to have Auntie Deb at that level advocating for us. You've seen programming on television. So Reservation Dogs is an important show that's out there that is helping to create awareness about, shedding some light on what's happening in Native communities and the struggles and barriers. But also there's a lot of really great humor. And they're talented. They're talented at doing this work. And so it's nice to see them elevate and be at that level. And there are many other, even in fashion, there's lots of really great up and coming fashion designers and models and
Yes.
in media. So it's nice to see an increase in terms of representation from our native talent. For me, it brings a sense of hope and this idea that, gosh, Native people are so resilient, and we continue to do so. And we should be, we should be able to have a space or a seat at the table, if you will, on many of these efforts. And so I'm really pleased to see such great work being done to create that awareness around, not just Native people, but all peoples. So the Phoenix Suns is a campaign that just was put out this season. So the local team here in Arizona, the Phoenix Suns, their marketing team did a really great job in creating a campaign. It's called Originative, and it's celebrating the 22 tribal nations in Arizona. And what I think is really nice about the way in which the Phoenix Suns built this campaign was the involvement of us. So they did reach out to the Phoenix Indian Center, not just us, but many of the tribes, other Native led organizations, to give input and to help guide this campaign as they were piecing it together. What makes sense, ensuring they were being culturally sensitive. And so I think that that was a really nice step toward, not just taking tribal nations' names, words, and exploiting, right? But instead, it was being inclusive of, hey, this is what we're thinking. What are your thoughts around it? Is this okay to do, type thing. And so I think it was a really nice step. They've incorporated lots of different things into their campaign that I think is wonderful to see. And if you hadn't gotten a chance, check out Phoenix Suns. They're playing in some turquoise jerseys. There's a whole story behind that representation. They have the word sun in all 22 languages on the jersey. They had a big reveal last week at the Phoenix Suns game, and had tribal leaders there. It was just beautiful and amazing to see. So I'm glad that there's a lot of movement toward that, and rightfully so. And I hope that it continues and only gets better.
Yeah. Yeah, and your boys got to be there and play a little bit or something. What did
Yeah.
your sons get to do?
So my boys were invited to help piece together a video for their marketing campaign. So um, it should have been a link I should have shared with you. I apologize, but there's I
We can
can
put it up
find it.
later.
But so we went to a park. They invited us to a park, and we're just filming them. It was really cute, and the boys didn't understand what they were doing at first. You have all these cameras, and they're telling them what to do, and then they pieced the video together, and my middle boy got to go to the game, and he saw himself up on the big screen, and he was blown away. He was just like, I was on the big screen with Devin Booker. It was really neat to see. So his
Yeah.
heart was so happy. And it was neat that, they included, and they all had long hair. So that was really neat to see. But yes, he was included.
I was so thrilled to see. I think it was Rosetta Walker that I saw put it up first. That was the Phoenix Suns campaign. I was like, "What's this?" And opened it up. I was like, "Oh my goodness! They have done such a nice job of being respectful, of calling out things of the Suns in all 22 languages." And
Mhm.
um, people will put it in the comments when we find it, but
Right.
encourage people to go watch that because the symbolism is all through these. I think they call them their city jerseys or something like that. And
City
there's
edition. Hmm.
yeah, city edition. And I just saw they're coming out with shoes now too.
Right.
So they've got their sneakers as well. So take a look at that. That to me was a good example of how to do it the right way and include people in.
That's.
Um, so we're hoping for more of that.
Hmm.
Okay, originative. I see there in the is that where we would find the link
Yeah.
originative?
If we Google that, I think it'll pull up the link.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good. Okay. Um, so let's see. You mentioned about getting a seat at the table. One of the things I want to mention that's not necessarily, there we go, that's not necessarily part of the Indian Center, but you and I are both connected to, is something called the Indigenous Leadership Academy. So for
Oh.
folks who are watching who are not local to Phoenix, and you may or may not be following ASU's American Indian Policy Institute. So
Mhm.
Dr. Tracy Morris runs the Policy Institute, the American Indian Policy Institute, and two cadres ago, and I know you were one of the original facilitators, and I'm a speaker as
Mhm.
well. But they have a beautifully designed curriculum for Native leaders. And I believe, I hope I'm getting this right, that the first cadre was centered mostly in Arizona. It was folks from Arizona. The
Mhm.
second cadre, who is now wrapped up, was more broad and included Native leaders from all over the place,
Mhm.
and they open up applications again in December. I think it's December 5th. Ooh,
Mhm.
look at that. Boy, she is fast. So there's where to keep an eye on. They're not open yet, but anything you want to comment on there, Jelana, about that, because I know you were really actively involved in that first cadre.
Yes, Dr. Morris has
Thank you,
just
Kristen.
done an amazing job, her and her team, in putting ILA together. It's a really, really neat space for Indigenous leaders to really grow, dialogue together, and build on their skill sets. So the curriculum is quite engaging. They go through various different topics in terms of how to build on their leadership skills, recognizing that you already have the leadership skill sets. You know, you're just making recognition of here's how you're integrating it, dialogue sharing, learning among one another. They bring in relevant speakers dependent upon the topic of discussion. So I was able to facilitate their very first cohort. And since then, I know that they have grown. There's a lot of interest around it. I definitely think this is a needed area for our leaders in Indigenous communities. So I like that, you know, through technology, there's now the opportunity to engage together, whether you be on the East Coast versus being on the West Coast, you're still able to connect. So in those ways, technology is on our side, and it allows them to gather together. And I really think ILA is definitely growing. There's a lot of conversation around it. They have a whole, um, neat, well thought out curriculum that takes the cohort participants through various different areas. So check it out. If you're interested, I would totally encourage you to get more information and submit an application. Why not?
Exactly. Exactly. And I saw that Kristen Talbert put the note up there, and she is the person on Dr. Tracy's team that's responsible to make this thing happen. So
Hi,
she knows from which
Kristen.
she speaks. Yes. Hi, Kristen. Are there any questions for us that you have? Because we're going to do a few more things and then wrap it up. So if there's anything you'd like to ask us, uh, feel free to put it in the comments and we will see it come up here on StreamYard and respond to it. But what we decided we were going to do was talk a little bit about this holiday, Thanksgiving, and how it has been historically presented. Let's say from elementary school on up, with the happy American Indians and the happy Pilgrims and all eating turkey together. And the truth is a bit different from that. Yes, the natives did teach the colonizers, how to hunt and how to survive, basically, and there was a meal, but it was not the happy forever linking arms and going out there. So just be aware of the history. um, I am honoring the day more as a day of gratitude for the good things that are around us and that I have in life. I live a pretty privileged life at this point in my life, and I'm pretty happy about that. It's one works to get there. So for me, it's a day of gratitude. Do you celebrate that, Jelana? And if you do, how do you celebrate that?
Yeah, such a great question. And thank you for shedding light on this. I know for some, some individuals, it can be a little bit uncomfortable in terms of, how to address this misinformed celebration around Thanksgiving. So for me personally, in Navajo culture and Navajo way, during this time, it really is an opportunity to celebrate, and we're celebrating our harvest. So around this fall time frame, traditionally we would gather all of the crops that in our fields that we've worked really hard for over the last season. And so it's about celebrating that harvest and preparing for winter. And so it calls for, in Navajo calendar, it's the new year. It's a new year for us. We would, of course, share, trade some of our harvest among various different family members. There would be a definite time to gather. During this time frame, there would be celebration. Moving into winter, traditional games are played, and so it's definitely a time to celebrate. And then you acknowledge the relationship that you have with Nihima Nahastan, which is our Mother Earth. Recognizing that she's provided corn and squash and beans and those traditional foods that'll we can store some of them to take us through winter. We can celebrate by, partaking in meals gathered together. And so, in those ways, that's my mindset on it, is being thankful. While I don't, plant, I personally don't plant here in the city. I did grow up in that lifestyle, and I appreciate it so much right now. During harvest time, it was a family-wide event. Everybody had a role, from the time of planting to the time that we gather crops and what we do after. And so I'm fortunate enough to have those memories that I hold on to. And so in now these days, in an urban setting, I'm a mother of three boys, and we have conversations about them. They didn't experience any of those things, but I still share with them the importance of it. And then, of course, we talk about the reality of, and I think schools have gotten a lot better about making sure, they don't give that misinformed
Yeah.
information. They're truthful in their ways, but we make it a point to help the awareness and the understanding of, it's not about pilgrims and that type of thing, but really, hey, I'd like to share more about who I am. So on Wednesday, actually, at my kids' school, I'll be going to share some songs and to talk a little bit about our Dene traditions and cultures, and we're going to take some blue corn mush. And so the students get to eat some of our traditional foods, and it's a way of that awareness, but also celebrating together. That's really, for me, what it's about. Of course, being thankful for the opportunity to, occupy this space and to breathe and live daily.
Yeah. Are there other foods that, yeah, thank you, Shauna. Um, are there other foods that you love to eat around this time of year that are traditional? Like, because I could go on about that with my heritage. So,
Yeah, so they really stem around natan, which is corn, um, uh, squash, and even naotla are beans. And so, for I'm going to speak from my family, my maternal side. All of my aunties, my mom has four sisters, and every one of them has their own meal that they make. And so one Auntie Emma, she makes chichin, which is sumac, and
okay.
it's really, really neat, delicious. It's made with sumac. It's kind of like a mushy type. It's similar to blue corn mush, which I'm sure you might be familiar with. But they're different, but yet similar. Just the taste and the flavor. And then, of course, we have our traditional stews. We eat mutton. We have mutton that we have corn, neshchiji, uh, corn stew. We also have baked goods, so baking in the outside oven. There's some breads that some of the aunties make during this special time of us gathering together. And my shumasane, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, was the person who made the best blue corn mush. And she had a special recipe, the way she did it, the number of times that she used her steering sticks to prepare this delicious blue corn mush for us. My other two aunties trying to replicate it, but each year we always like, no, it's not, almost there, but not
Yeah.
quite. She definitely had a special touch. So lots of our traditional foods stem around corn or things that we just harvested.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm excited to see everyone and to celebrate and have some delicious, yummy food.
Yeah, I'll throw in a little bit of Pennsylvania Dutch heritage here. So I grew up on a farm in southeast Pennsylvania, near Pottstown, Pennsylvania, and I remember, so my dad had a day job in Philadelphia, which was 40 or 50 miles away with the railroad, but then
Hmm.
he farmed the farm nights and weekends. Prior to him, my grandparents had farmed the farm full time, and my grandparents were born in the 1880s. So they were a lot older when I came along. They were in their 70s when I came along. So I feel like I got to see back into the prior century because she was still doing mush and the pies every Friday, I believe that was. And there was a real routine to this. So I can bake a pie and do potato filling, which is something that people outside that area don't know what it is. But think about putting breadcrumbs and whipped eggs and doctoring up your mashed potatoes and then baking it so it like puffs. And
Oh,
do you like the puff? Do you like the dry stuff on the outside like I do, or the mushy potatoes on the inside? I like those too. And both Joe and I can bake a mean pie for you. And I
oh,
can do shoe fly pies, which are very German and from that part of Pennsylvania. So I think it's a little bit of a day of gluttony. I have to watch myself taking tiny portions because one cannot eat like one used to when you get to be my age. So the other thing, and we were talking about this before, is that Native American Heritage Day is Friday. And we looked it up, folks, and George W. Bush actually approved this thing in 2008. So it's been around since 2008, and we didn't know a whole lot about it other than maybe that was the sort of balancing act there with Thanksgiving here and then Native American Heritage Day makes sense to me.
right.
So what I did was I found, go to the Google when you can't figure out what else to do. And they had some really helpful suggestions there. And it was things like learn what native land you're on. We already talked about that. Enjoy indigenous art and follow Native Americans on social media. And I can tell you that if you start following one group, others will pop up. And I like things like powwows.com, and I follow a lot of artists and fashion designers that are
Mhm.
Native American, and then just random other groups that pop into my feed.
Right.
Learn about the challenges Native American communities have faced. Learn about Native American good news. Read books written by Indigenous authors and poets. What a great jumping off point! So, Jelana, you wrote a children's book. Tell us about that.
I did. So I love all those ideas, by the way, to further your understanding, land acknowledgement. What space do you occupy? The art, the fashion, they're up and coming, which is really neat. The literature piece is something I'm personally connected to. So I mentioned earlier that I'm passionate about language revitalization. So there are not a lot of Dene speakers, but in comparison to many other tribes, we're actually at an okay state. I'm married to my husband is an enrolled member with the MHA Nation, so the Mandan, the Hidatsa, and the Arikara tribes of North Dakota. And he is Arikara, and they have no more fluent speakers. Zero, none, no more left. And that's just really a really sad
Is
um, scenario, but it's relevant for many tribal nations. And so creating literature to help our young people to learn the language has been one of my um, goals and something that I wanted to make sure that I help. And so I wrote this book. The real idea was to tell the story in Dene and to tell it in Navajo. And so I write about becoming Miss Navajo because I'm a former Miss Navajo Nation.
Yes.
I was the Goodwill Ambassador for my tribe for a year back in 2001, so several years ago. And I tell the story about that week because it's just really a once in a lifetime opportunity to be part of the Miss Navajo pageant. It's not your ordinary pageant that you see in dominant world. There are, of course, similarities, but for the most part, it's you displaying your traditional knowledge and teachings that have been passed down and given to you over, your upbringing. And so I was able to participate in this pageant and I write about it. But I write from the Dene perspective. I write in Navajo. So writing my story in Navajo is really powerful. And yeah, so it was a project that I put together and I submitted it to a publishing company here in Arizona and they accepted my manuscript. And it was a long-term project, nothing that I was just excited about getting literature out there that resonated. So I thought about myself as a young girl, and I never saw books where there was my traditional regalia on, and so that was the goal really. And so the book is called Becoming Miss Navajo. And there's two versions. One of them is in English, and the other one actually is in Navajo, entirely in Navajo. And again, it tells the story of my participation in the Miss Navajo pageant.
And I know from meeting some of the current and former Miss Navajos, they are royalty to the
Mhm.
tribe. And so, what does Miss Navajo do once she's won the award?
Yeah, so serving as Miss Navajo Nation, it's you are a full-time employee with the Navajo Nation, and for 365 days, you really travel and you are asked to appear and speak. In the local community, on the reservation, statewide, nationally, and even internationally. So Miss Navajo really is the ambassador, and she is, the auntie. She serves as the older sister. She's a role model for others, and usually each Miss Navajo that comes into office has a platform that they're going to raise awareness around, or issues that are important to them that they want to talk about. And so during the time that I was Miss Navajo, it was centered around language. So I went to a school where I was taught to read and write Navajo, in addition to being around my grandparents and my parents who primarily spoke Navajo. It was so helpful for me to stay connected to them. And so I grew up in that way. However, I left the reservation to go to school here in the city. And when I was here, I really went through culture shock, and being away from it, I missed it. And so it was like this reality, this identity, a realization of like, who am I in this space? And coming back to my language and connecting myself to my foundation that my parents helped instill in me was really my way of making sure that I am going to, move forward and be successful. And so I wanted to share that with others. Be proud of who you are, embrace the language and the traditions and the cultures, especially when you're young and you have your grandparents right there beside you. Whereas, if you move away, it's much harder. And so that was really my platform. And it's since then created the career path that I'm on. I still do teach language on a part-time basis. I teach at ASU, have taught for Stanford for a number of years. And so really staying connected to language, it's truly something I'm passionate about.
So we do have one question from Shauna in the comments. Is being selected as Miss Navajo about looks, culture, language? Oh, there we go. Works of service, candidly, does it reinforce some of the not so good Western culture, or does it reject those influences?
Such a great
It's a great
question.
question.
Yeah. So it's really it's a combination because we want to be able to demonstrate and to hold on to those traditional cultural teachings that our grandmothers are giving us, our parents are teaching us. So it's that opportunity to share that, hey, I you have skill sets that you demonstrate at that time. But also, you want to be in the know of dominant world issues and challenges and be able to articulate that to non-Navajo, in this case, non-Navajo, non-Native people. And so having the ability to articulate yourself well in English is important. And so I feel like, the pageant does have, there are some, we incorporate some of the ways in which you demonstrate, like your traditional outfit, and you're judged on that. Is that the way to do things? Maybe, maybe not. So there is a combination of dominant world influence on the way the pageant is set up, but really, I think it's based upon how you look at it. So for me, it was really my opportunity to showcase what I had learned from my mother and my maternal grandmother and all of my maternal aunties growing up. And so it was about demonstrating, and even for them, that I carry these teachings proudly, and it makes me who I am today, and it's because of their teachings that I'm going to then take this work and serve in a leadership role for the younger people moving forward. So I hope that makes sense and answers a little of what you're asking.
Sounds good. And Yasmin, can you pull Angela's comment up into there you go. So Angela Salazar is our buddy, and she talks about her tribe, and the Yaqui tribe has a pageant where they show skills and cultural practices.
Hmm.
So a little bit of everything today.
Right.
We're coming up to the top of the hour. So, as we do that, before you close us out with something really beautiful, if anyone wants to get a hold of you, where would they do that? What's the
Mhm.
easiest way to find you?
Yeah, so I'm just again so thankful to be able to have a dialogue with you and our listeners and viewers that are watching. So I can be found at the Phoenix Indian Center. So I would encourage all of our viewers to please visit our website, to reach out to the Phoenix Indian Center is where you would find me. I have an email, so info at, oh, there it is, info at phxindcenter.org for any questions that you may have. Even if we don't have the service directly, or we don't know the answer, we're most certainly willing to help you find, and connect you with the right people for whatever questions you may have. And so that's an email address. Of course, you can call us at the center. I encourage you to reach out to me and to us. We're a service agency that's willing to continue the work for our people, but also create further understanding on awareness of who we are as Indigenous peoples.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you took the hour to spend helping people understand things a little bit better and helping me to understand things a little bit better. It's always nice to layer on that information. And if anyone wants to get a hold of me, of course, you can find me on LinkedIn. Please do connect. It'll say follow, but feel free to go to the more button and hit connect. And I'm open to just about anybody, unless you're trying to sell me something that's really obvious. I'm starting to say no. But but I love to connect people there. Or Laurie at Aligned at Work, what you see on the wall back here. There we go. Laurie at aligned@work.com is the direct email right to me. Um, so with that, I'm going to ask you. You had a great idea for how to end our time together, so I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah. So I am so excited, as I've stated, to be here today, and I wanted to share a special song with all of you. And this, singing is one way that I feel a sense of connection again to my homelands. I'm 4.5 hours away. My parents live up there. Whenever I feel lost or maybe, confused about something, I always try to do song. So in Navajo, our grandparents, one of their teachings is "Hayin Walontle," which means you should carry song. Song connects you back to who you are, where you come from. And so I want to share this special song around this. As many of us are going to be traveling, we're going to engage with our family. This song is called Shithnejone. No drum. And it's a song that I composed with my mom, actually. And we talk about we have four cardinal directions, and in the cardinal directions are four sacred mountains that surround our homelands, and within them we are protected. And while I'm not necessarily within the mountains, they still bring me home. They're still my protectors. And so, all of us have uh, certain family members that we just feel good being around, or spaces, maybe where you grew up, that just makes you feel connected again. And so my hope is that through this song, you can take yourself back to that space. And I hope that our paths will cross at some point. I hope to meet each of you if you want to reach out. And so here's my song. All right. So it goes like this. Shilne Johnny, lay shilne Johnny, lay shilne Johnny, shil was Jean, hey, neo, alt that shit was Jean go not shadow, neo, that shit was Jean go not shadow, neo. Shade ate shich wajongo na shadow neo ate shich wajongo na shadow neo na ho constant shich wajongo na shadow neo Shilne Johnny, lay shilne Johnny, lay shilne Johnny, shil was Jean, hey, neo, altro de shit was Jean gonna shadow, neo, tratadine a teen, the kako, was Jean gonna shadow. Sa ahnare, big ahojon, nishlingo na shadow. وجونا هسكلي نسنجو ناشادو شيل نجوني لي شيل نجوني لي شيل نجوني شيل وجون hey neo. Thank you so much for hearing my
Thank you.
song.
I heard it once said that singing your song for people is just like a really intimate way to get to know someone. So I really want to thank you for that. You've honored us with it, and then to everyone who's on here, if you loved what we talked about, this recording will come up as part of the LinkedIn Live. You'll be able to get back to it. I believe if you just find the event, you could get back to it. You can go to my page and find it because we created it there, and it will be on Aligned at Work's YouTube channel, which I'd love to have more subscribers. So please head over to YouTube, look up Aligned at Work, and once we get it all downloaded and later today, it should be out there. So you can find that and share it with other people. And thank you to everybody who was here. Thanks for all who were on and dropped off. Those of you that hung till the end, thank you so much. And Jolyana, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Blessings to all. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.